Thank you for watching another episode of the Boat Geeks. If you are liking what you're finding here at our channel, please hit the thumbs up below.
And please like and subscribe so you don't miss a future episode.
Absolutely. And you can comment too. Feel free to comment.
Yeah, we love to hear what you think.
Thank you.
I talked to the steam operator and said, I might want to bring the boat back to life, but we didn't know.
Yeah.
And my instructor was on shore and I was out on the dock, and the steam crane operator was amazing because they sent divers down who put chains first around the boat and then some straps, and the boat was on her side. And he had to bring her up high enough to clear the water and then dropped her on her hull.
Oh
and she floated. And my instructor on shore and I were both like, she floated.
Oh.
And
She wants to live.
then said, if I would pay for all the materials, our school, the school I was enrolled, could rebuild her.
From beautiful Port Townsend, Washington, a Victorian seaport on the Salish Sea, and recorded aboard the motor vessel Traveler, it's the Boat Geeks with Daeron and Darren.
Welcome to the next episode of the Boat Geeks. I am your host, Darren.
And I'm your other host, Darren.
And today our special guest is Betsy Davis, the Executive Director of the Northwest School of Wooden Boat Building. Welcome, Betsy.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, it's a beautiful morning in the Pacific Northwest at Port Ludlow. I say beautiful every day.
It doesn't matter.
Any day that we're at the marina.
Cloudy today, sunny yesterday. We get it all.
The weather has been crazy, but any day that we're at the marina or on a boat or around boats, it's a beautiful day.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't you agree?
I agree. It's a fun place to be right now.
Now, normally you would be, I'm assuming, in your office getting a lot of work done.
Which is
right
also a fun place to be.
Yes.
My office
Imagine.
tends to be 3 boat building shops, 1 marine systems shop, an 8-acre campus right on the water,
Yeah.
a couple different admin spaces. Oh, we have some little historic cottages for student housing.
Yes, you do.
And a building on the National Register that houses the Ajax Cafe.
Oh, yes.
You have lots of stuff going on down there. Your office space is as beautiful as ours. Absolutely. It is.
And for people that are unfamiliar with the location, it is in Port Hadlock, Washington. So look up Port Hadlock. We've got Port Gamble, Port Ludlow, Port Hadlock, and Port Townsend.
Yes.
And if it weren't for Squim, we would have Port Angeles, and we'd have all in a row. But anyway,
We'll call it Port Squim. But
So, yeah.
it's actually the school is like less than 5-minute walk from my house. In fact,
Yeah.
we many daily walks, we walk right by it or near it. Beautiful campus and facility. We'll get into that. One thing that we always start off every podcast, most of our podcasts with our guests, is talking about boats, because we are the Boat Geeks, and the vast majority of our guests are in one way or another a boat geek as well. Could you, Betsy, tell us about how boats and boating came into your life and into your routine? Because right now you're a big part of the Port Townsend boating scene.
Yeah.
But has it always been that way?
Well, you know what? I grew up around the water and loved just dinking around in the water. I think we had a little aluminum boat with an outboard I'd go out in sometimes. But I was in Girl Scouts, and I went to Girl Scout camp and learned a little bit about canoeing and rowing and things like that. And I've always loved being around the water. And I'm one of those weird people, don't know why, would be driving down the freeway, and if I see a car with a boat on top, it's like, oh, there's a boat on it. And I'm someone who just really resonates with things that are both beautiful and functional. And I really savor that when I'm around the waterfront and around boats. But I really wasn't around boats all that much. And then I turned 40, and I was in Catalina with some friends. And for whatever reason, I decided it was time to buy a boat. And so I came back to Seattle and looked at some boats, and ended up buying a boat called Glory Bee, who had been built in 1914. And she, in fact, is the one that directed the second half of my life.
Wow.
And brought me into boats and boating in a lot of ways that I hadn't ever explored before.
So Glory Bee was your first boat?
You can relate. Iron
Well,
Feather.
other than
Iron Feather
kayaks.
is Darren's first.
Yeah, that was
Big
our
boat.
first venture
And
into boating.
you can see Glory Bee from your seat there, can you?
Yes, absolutely. She's a beautiful boat. Yeah, I see her every day. So that is amazing. So I'm assuming when you say you grew up on the waterfront and you came back to Seattle that you grew up here.
I did. I grew up on Mercer Island in the middle of Lake Washington.
Yep.
So certainly lots of boats around you your entire life. What happened at 40 that made you go, I want a boat?
Magic.
Yeah. It happened to me too, so I understand.
Some people
all
buy
it-
a Porsche, and I bought a 1914 piece of history.
Yeah, no kidding.
That is so cool.
So Glory Bee is a 1914, I'm going to assume like a dream boat or
Actually, I call her a raised deck cruiser.
Okay.
And she was built on Vashon Island in the Taylor Grandy yard. And that's the Grandy who was the father of the Grandys who went on to run the Grandy Boat Company.
Yeah.
Who built the dream boats.
Wow.
So Glory Bee actually predates the
dream boats.
Lake
She's a
Union
precursor
dream boats.
to the Lake Union dream
That's
boats.
amazing. Wow.
Yeah, very unique just boat in general. Just go, I love history as well. I used to be in antiques a long time ago, in another lifetime, but just every, so you said 1914?
Yep.
So that has been around for 110 years. You just think
It's
about
amazing. Yeah.
all the things that have happened on or around that boat, what it's seen. It's an very important piece of history, as is Iron Feather, also has an extensive history in the Pacific Northwest. So how did you find that boat and how did you fall in love? Because I know you did. You still have her.
When I knew I wanted to look at boats, I went to a yacht brokerage and I went on a few boats, and I went with some of my neighbors, and they said, why don't you look at that boat? And I go, no, she's too big. No way, no way. And then at some point I went out for a test ride on her, and
That was it.
that was it. And I had so much to learn.
Yeah.
And Captain Frosty taught me how to single hand a boat. He said, don't you go expecting other people to catch lines and things like that. You've got to learn how to manage the boat yourself.
Yeah.
Well, that took a while. The first times I went out, I had to have someone else drive the boat and I would watch. And I'm still learning all the time.
As we all are. It's okay.
Yeah, every day.
Yep.
It's good.
So now when you were looking at Glory Bee, when I first started shopping for boats, I was very ignorant and just started looking at everything. I had no idea what my limits were or why. But when I got interested in wooden boats, which was actually my wife's doing, people told me to run. I had probably at least half the people say, turn around and run the other direction, right? Because, and I know what they're getting at. Wooden boats are expensive to upkeep. Did anybody tell you that? Or were you, everybody was just on board, this is a beautiful boat, jump in?
I think people thought it was pretty quirky, but it was just something I decided to do. And really, I think it's less about the human owning the boat and more about the human providing stewardship for
Yes.
the historic boat for that chunk of time.
That's what I've always said. I'm the steward of Iron Feather for now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
So-
I think one of the things I find phenomenal about wooden boats is they have the ability to build human community in a way that a lot of other objects don't. And it's partly true when I'm on the boat that I can pull into a marina and just have conversations with people I've never met because they resonate with the boat.
Yeah.
It's also true the boat and I have been through some challenges, and one of those is that the boat burned and sank in a marina fire in 2002
Oh my.
and was lost is what we'd been told, and only a little bit of her was still floating above the waterline. And knowing she was lost, I phoned the previous owners of the boat. I felt responsible to let them know. I talked with them for a half hour, and then they gave me the previous owners of the boat. I hadn't talked to them, and I talked to them for a half hour. I think I went back 4 or 5 owners, some of whom we've never met. each other before.
Yeah.
We talked for 45 minutes because of the connections around this vessel. I sometimes laugh and say, you know, if your refrigerator breaks, you don't necessarily phone the previous owner of the refrigerator.
No.
So there's
not a community around it. Yeah.
And you know, whether it's whatever the source of that is, I think it's really phenomenal.
It is.
And that community led me in the second half of my life to go to boat building school and take care of Glory Bee through that process, and also led me vocationally into working at the Center for Wooden Boats in Seattle, running that organization, and then moving out to the Northwest School of Wooden Boat Building.
Wow.
That is a phenomenal story.
Wow.
And, you know, just an incredible situation to kind of, I almost say, I mean, it seems like you're kind of drifting. I don't know your life, but you weren't like focused on, I love wooden boats, I want to get a wooden boat. But the fact that you found this boat, fell in love with it, and then end up here at the Wooden Boat Building School, obviously
Magic.
something
It
was
was
meant
magic.
to be. Yeah.
Good magic too.
So how does she ride? I love taking Iron Feather out. It's such a smooth and just wonderful ride on these old boats in my experience.
Well, going across the Straits of Georgia when the wind that was supposed to settle down didn't settle down, and
Wind
I
never
want to go
listens.
north, and the only way to survive is going east.
Yeah.
It's not always great.
Yeah.
Though, when I got to my destination that day and pulled in, I thought, oh, okay, all these huge boats around me are going to say they had a great ride, and we were like challenged. And it turns out, I think we had a better experience on Glory Bee because we were going slowly and cutting through the waves
That's
as
right.
opposed to trying to go fast and bounce across the water. Now, on a day that doesn't have a lot of wind and it's sunny, or
Trawler water.
even if it's raining, it's just beautiful. And she's a raised deck cruiser, so there's room inside, and people who are used to sailing feel like she has a lot of room inside.
Oh, yeah.
Because they can even stand up if they're not too tall. And so I love the feeling of being in the boat and going along a shore and going along and seeing trees or seeing little homes nestled along the water or little communities. It's beautiful.
It's the best.
And I think it's interesting that for me, one thing about being in Glory Bee, in the pilot house, there's all these wood windows. So when I am looking from the inside of the boat out, every view is framed.
Yes.
Wow.
In wood.
It's picturesque.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't we live in paradise?
Oh,
Doesn't mean we want a bunch more people moving out here. We do, but
So when you're cruising along at your optimal cruising speed,
7
which
knots.
is
6
knots.
knots
There
would
we
be
go.
a lovely.
It's all
6
about the trip.
knots, and
Yes.
it's nice, calm water. We were just talking about it when we walked over there this morning. I bet you leave nary a wake.
Yeah.
behind
Yeah, not
her.
much of a wake.
Not much of a wake at all. Yeah.
And, I'm aware that it's a choice to use fossil fuels for recreation. And I admire sailors who don't need to do that.
Me too.
One thing I like about Glory Bee is I don't use very much.
Good.
I can probably go for an hour on less than half a gallon of fuel.
Wow.
Wow. And
That's
a
sailboat
displacement
efficiency.
hull
Yeah.
and all of that. It's really nice.
What is the engine?
She has an Isuzu diesel engine in right now, and it's the same engine that was in the boat before the fire. And after the boat burned and sank, I learned a new term called pickling the engine. So when the boat got hauled up out of the water, someone worked on the engine for me and put diesel in the cylinders so they wouldn't rust. And so basically I'm using the same engine, although the electronic parts got rebuilt.
Yeah. Wow.
I heard you just put it in a bag of rice. I guess that doesn't work. So that is, to me, that's incredible that she sank and was completely pretty much submerged, but you would not be able to tell
Yeah, you
at
can't
all.
tell.
What was that process? What made you determine she's not a complete loss? We're going to get her out of the water and fix her up. Like, what was that decision making? Must have been difficult.
Well, I had a chance to reinvent my life around that magical age of, I don't know, in my early 40s. And I chose to go to boat building school in Seattle and had a wonderful set of teachers that were so inspirational. And I hadn't done anything like that kind of hands-on work before. And that too really shaped me. I became an evangelist for trade schools. And I, during that program, was learning a lot of things that I wanted to apply to Glory Bee. And my instructors actually asked me to give a talk about Glory Bee one day. So I stopped by the boat that morning. I was about 6 weeks from graduating. And on the boat, I picked up the notebook of original photos that previous owners had gathered through the years and put on the boat. And I brought that to school with me and gave the talk. And that night was the fire at the yacht club. So this stuff I could never have replaced.
Wow.
I happened to have with me.
The magic continues.
And
I know,
so,
right?
anyway, the fire happened. The Coast Guard reported that 13 boats had sunk and were gone. And my boat was one of those. And then there were 7 others really badly damaged. And about 3 weeks after the fire, the steam crane came in to lift the boats out of the water, put them on a barge to take them over to a salvage yard. And I talked to the steam operator and said, I might want to bring the boat back to life, but we didn't know.
Yeah.
And my instructor was on shore and I was out on the dock, and the steam crane operator was amazing because they sent divers down who put chains first around the boat and then some straps, and the boat was on her side. And he had to bring her up high enough to clear the water and then dropped her on her hull.
Oh my
And
gosh.
she floated. And my instructor on shore and I were both like, she floated.
Oh.
And
She wants to live.
then
Yes.
said, if I would pay for all the materials, our school, the school I was enrolled, could rebuild her. And I had a lot to learn about marine insurance, and I'm just so glad I had an insurance policy. I thought I got an insurance policy so that if I was out driving the boat and I ran into someone, I
Right.
could pay for the damage.
Right.
That's nothing.
Yeah.
The pollution coverage.
Yes.
I was in a meeting that the Coast Guard held with all the boat owners who were involved in this. And the Coast Guard said everyone is jointly and severally responsible for all the cleanup costs. And I thought, I didn't at that time know that I had pollution coverage in my yacht policy and that I had salvage coverage. Both of those things saved the day.
Wow.
I also had an agreed value policy, which means at the time I got my insurance, the insurance company and I agreed the boat was worth $65,000. That's what I bought it for. So as the boat got older, I couldn't claim it was more precious, nor could they claim it was less valuable. So I had a check for the boat for $65,000 within 3 weeks of the fire. And then I bought back the remains of the boat for $500.
Wow.
No one would really think
Yeah,
that was a
sure.
good deal. But I did. And so my instructor said, okay, if you pay for materials, we can rebuild her. So I did a budget and said, I have $65,000. Am I going to be able to rebuild the boat? And we did. And it came within $5,000
Wow.
of that. Of course, I put more money in her since then because we do that with boats.
Yes.
But we undertook her restoration up at the school. It would never have happened otherwise. And yet it was a win-win because the students, of whom I was one, were able to work with really fine materials, beautiful bronze for the hardware and beautiful wood for the hull.
Wow.
And the deck and house. And it was a cool project to be part of. And obviously it was a win for the boat because she's going to be around long past me. And that's wonderful. And it was a win for me because I got to be part of the project.
Wow.
And, once you get much of the hull and deck off the boat, You can really get in there and address problems. And we did a lot of work on the boat. About a third of the planks below the waterline. We redid about 2/3 above the waterline. We sistered new frames in 80 new frames next to the old frames all around the boat. There weren't any that were rotten. There were 2 that were rotten that we took out. But that was awesome. And we had to put in a new stem. That's a big piece of work.
Oh,
and then
wow.
we had to rebuild the cabin. I didn't have plans, but my neighbor Rob remembered that when he stood in the pilot house, his head just touched the ceiling. So once we were rebuilding the pilot house sole, the cabin sole, the floor, he came in and stood, and then we measured
great.
up, and that's
That
where
was the
we
height.
put the height. I can't remember your question at this point.
Oh, it
just
doesn't
the whole-
matter.
Yeah,
It
no,
doesn't matter.
The original question was just the decision to actually rebuild, and that totally explains it. What an opportunity. And you saved a piece of history. I mean, that's an
And
amazing.
I would want to correct that to say the school.
Yes.
Seattle Central
Well,
and the
Of
inspirational
course.
instructors. It would never have happened without them. And they'd both worked in the yards in Lake Union when they were still wooden boat yards.
Mhm.
And gosh, I just became so impressed with the skills
Yeah.
that people have who know how to be successful in the trades. And boy, that sure informed the second part of my life. I think
Yeah.
sometimes people might place more value on what we've sometimes called white collar jobs or information technology
yeah,
or high tech or biotech. And those are important. And it's also important the kinds of intelligence that people bring who know how to deal with problems in the physical world and all the skills they've developed. And I have a huge, huge respect for that. So I'd say it's the instructors and the people in the trade who brought Glory Bee back, and I got to go along for the ride.
How long was the restoration?
Fire was February 2002. Relaunch was May of 2005.
Wow.
And there were over 100 students who'd worked on her there, and there were over like 30 historic boats out there tooting their horns.
It's so cool.
There were,
wow.
I think, 14 previous owners there, some on walkers.
Oh.
It was really cool community moment.
Yeah, you wouldn't see that in a modern boat situation.
Wow.
That is amazing. Obviously, a win-win for you and the school, and another win for history. That's an amazing story.
You made history
Yeah.
by continuing the history.
And you probably through that process, you know that boat now more than you
Oh, yeah.
ever would have otherwise, because you've from the inside out, bottom up.
Probably, but I just keep learning.
There's
I
always
do
more.
want to say Glory Bee strikes me as a boat of 9 lives or a cat of
Yeah,
9 lives
Yeah,
because it is really incredible that she survived
It
this
is.
fire and got better.
yeah.
But when you read the old Pacific Motorboat magazine articles that mention her, in 1917, it says she was in a big storm in Tacoma and I think washed against some rocks
Oh,
and had to
wow.
be towed 7 miles and only her funnel was she was rebuilt.
Yeah.
And then a year or two later, it has another article and it says she was on a mooring buoy on Orcas Island. And one morning, the owners looked out and she wasn't at the mooring buoy.
Oh my God.
And they thought she'd been stolen.
Yeah.
And a few days later, she was found at Point Roberts, unharmed,
Oh my gosh.
floating. So she had crossed the straits on her own.
Wow.
And so I do think she's an amazing vessel.
We would have to agree.
I would agree. That is
Wow.
insane. Yeah.
I didn't know any of that. All I knew is that there was a fire,
Yeah.
and that's all I knew.
Well, you
This
got to
is
think
incredible.
110 years. There's just
Yeah,
so
there's
much
got to be a
history.
few things that'll happen.
Yeah. So
Wow.
owning a wooden boat, so I totally agree with you in terms of the trades. I used to be a butcher back when I was in my teens and so forth. I was union, and I absolutely 100% support the trades as you do. And living in Port Townsend, it's hard not to. I mean, this whole town is built on those trades. Getting Glory Bee, going to the boat building school, how did that lead to where you are now with the Northwest Boat Building School?
You know, I had worked in high tech, and then I'd opened and run my own retail store in Seattle. And during that time, I wanted to give back. And so I joined the board of the Center for Wooden Boats. And one of the fellow board members, was Dave Mullins, who was the lead instructor up at the boat building school. And at some point, I had left my tech job, and I had realized retail wasn't my raison d'etre. And I'd gone on a retreat by myself for a week and looked through old journals and stuff, and realized I wanted to learn how to work on boats or build boats. And so I talked to Dave Mullins and said, I'm thinking about this, but I have no background. He said, don't sell yourself short. Why don't you try it? And so I did. And I went to the school. I was the worst person I was the best person in class when it came to taking notes in the classroom. I was the worst person in the class once I get into the classroom. But I learned so much about how to problem solve in the physical world. And so it was dramatic learning for me. But by the time I was about to graduate, I was starting to think about what my employment was going to be. And I had worked in high tech. And so Dave said, well, do you have to get a job? And I said, yes, I do need to get a job. And I started realizing, because I thought I maybe would go work in a boatyard, I was realizing I wouldn't hire myself first. I was not as strong as a lot of the people, and I wasn't as practical and handy as a lot of the people. I'd be a very diligent, responsible employee. But in terms of just native talent in the trade, that wasn't something I would bring. And so I was kind of going, I'm probably going to be on the underside of a boat for 2 years grinding, trying to make it fair. And I couldn't see myself staying engaged in that work. And so I wasn't really sure what to do. And then the boat sank, and I got to be in charge of procuring all the materials. And so I was working on the boat. And then the job opened up at Center for Wooden Boats, and Dave Mullins, and I'd left the board a few years earlier. And Dave said, why don't you apply for that job as executive director at the Center for Wooden Boats? And I was like, well, I can't. The boat's not done yet. Glory Bee's not done yet. And he goes, how many jobs do you think are going to come up that combine project management and boats?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh. And he said, thank goodness for mentors.
Wise guy.
And he said, well, unless you want to run a boatyard. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. And so I ended up applying for the job at Center for Wooden Boats, and was fortunate to be selected, and got to bring kind of the project management skills I'd learned in my tech job with the knowledge I'd learned at the boat building school.
Yeah.
And I thought I was going to take care of a fleet of little wooden boats and, hands-on kind of thing. And of course, the job morphed as South Lake Union developed in Seattle, and it became more about how to preserve a grassroots nonprofit in the midst of rapid urban redevelopment. And I got to learn a whole lot about that.
I don't think I've ever met anyone with as interesting a career trajectory as Betsy.
It's like from orbit, you can see that it's a path straight to the school, right? But from
it was all magic to get there.
Living in the moment.
I can't say I had a plan.
Yeah.
I have one friend who knew in second grade he wanted to be a zoologist. Well, and his parents did too, because he had a lot of amphibians in the bathtub. And that, in fact, is what he is brilliant at. I never had that.
I'm jealous of those people too.
And I think you're a very good example. And I'm thinking of our number 2 daughter, Tony, in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Who was an overachiever academically, got a couple of degrees, and throughout her adult life, post-university, has always struggled with not doing what she felt she should be doing. And it's hard to say you're doing exactly what you need to be doing. And I think you're going to be an inspiration. So Tony, if you're watching this, that you do find what you need to do, or what you do finds you. It kind of sounds like it was a little
One
bit
of the
both.
things I'm really, really grateful for is that my vocation came in line with my values at the most fundamental level. For me, I really want to preserve public access to being on the water.
Yeah.
Because for me, that's a place my spirit gets filled, my community gets filled. I feel so grateful for time on the water. And I was thrilled to be at the Center for Wooden Boats, creating a place where anyone from the city of Seattle could get out on the water if they wanted that experience. And I think helping people build the skills to work on boats is one of the avenues towards being able to connect with the waterfront and experience it.
All right, let's talk about the Northwest School of Wooden Boat Building. Like I mentioned to you before we started the podcast, I've had a couple tours of the campus, from both knowing Kevin and Chris Dunn, and beautiful, beautiful campus from the outside, but then inside, insane. The what you have, just the tools, the classrooms, the setup. I was incredibly impressed. Like Daeron and I have said, we've employed graduates from the school, and the service that the Wooden Boat Building School is doing here in the Pacific Northwest can't be said enough, because we live in a mecca of boats and boating communities and boat yards and boat builders, and just it's so perfect. Moving here to Port Townsend was just a process of discovery for me and my wife. First we saw the wooden boat show, and then got to know the Maritime Center and Boat Haven, and it was just, everything was just growing on this community in this area. And then, funny enough, when we moved to Hadlock, that's kind of when we discovered the school, and it just builds and builds and builds, and we have such a great community up here in the Pacific Northwest, and especially around wooden boats. And when we bought Iron Feather, everybody was like, well, you live in the perfect place in the entire world to own a wooden boat. And so I highly recommend, if I could go to the school myself, I would. In fact, for 4 years, maybe 4 years ago, I was looking at potentially a career change and doing that. It didn't work out, but we did learn from Kevin. We just had Kevin on the podcast recently that there's smaller intensive courses.
Which just started. Right?
Yes, we have one week-long intensive right now that Kevin's teaching, and it's so fun to see the range of people who have come in. There's 3 or 4 people from the Coast Guard base in Seattle, and there's someone from NAVC, a naval group in Norfolk, Virginia.
Wow.
And there's someone who works with fish boats down in Newport, Oregon. There's several people from the Marine crew of Washington State Parks. And our person who came the furthest is from Tasmania, Australia.
Wow.
See, now that speaks
International
volumes. This isn't a bunch of locals going to the school, which is fine, of course, but this is a world-renowned school where you have people traveling from all over just to take an intensive, a short intensive class, which is now on my docket. I'm going to be looking at these courses and doing whatever I can when I can. But you also have much longer course. Now, what's the average length of a school?
So there's 2 primary programs we offer at the school, and we have a 12-month boat building program, and we have a 9-month marine systems program. Both programs start October 1st of each year, and the marine systems program runs through June, and boat building through the middle of September. The boat building program is actually offered as an Associate of Occupational Studies degree.
Huh.
The marine systems program is a diploma program. These the school started in the boatyard with just the boat building program. And so it's really a time-tested curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
There was a wonderful boat builder who came from, I think he was 4th generation boat builder, moved up from Lake Union to be the first instructor at the school. His name, Bob Prothero. And he taught the first few years, and one of the students from the early years then kept the legacy going and kept teaching for something like 35 years. And most of the current boat building instructors were taught by that person. So there's actually a really wonderful lineage here.
Yeah.
And there's a pretty cool ecosystem in Port Townsend, as you've talked about. I mean, the density of quality craftspeople is amazing and is internationally recognized.
Yeah.
And I think there's a combination of partners that makes that happen. And the boat school is one piece within the ecosystem.
For sure.
It draws interesting people here, and people get some training, and then they go on to found businesses or work in the yard. And the boatyard itself, the physical infrastructure that the port provides, and the people who manage and lead and work in those businesses have so much expertise. And then with the Northwest Maritime Center helping build the pipeline of awareness for young people into the trades, it's an exciting moment to be in this part of the world. I wanted to mention that the boat school started just with teaching the boat building. And Bob Prothero, when he founded the school, as I understand it, said, we're not about teaching boat building. That's kind of surprising. But he said, we're teaching craftsmanship, and boat building is a good way to learn that. And craftsmanship, I think, means learning how to take something that's an idea and express it with your hands, and learning the muscle memory so you can do it efficiently, practicing it over and over like you do with music or something else.
Yeah.
So
10,000
that you
hours
can
getting that.
deliver it.
Mm-hmm.
There's an idea of integrity that's part of craftsmanship. You do it right, not because someone's watching over you, but because it's important to do it right so people are safe. And so that the person who follows along behind you 20 years later knows what you did.
Yeah.
So there's this ethic of craftsmanship that I think's valuable, that the founders imbued into the whole culture of the organization. And it has always been instructors who are carrying forward the school because they want another generation of people to learn these skills and learn craftsmanship. When I came out 10 years ago, I did a strategic planning process, and it took about 1.5 years. One of the entities we really wanted to hear from are employers, because we're a trade school. The idea is that when people come out, they have skills and they can get jobs. So, elephant in the room, I asked the question of the employers, is a wooden boat school relevant in today's era? And it took 1.5 years of a lot of conversations, but the answer was yes. We hire your graduates. We're going to keep hiring your graduates. And they're never, with a few exceptions, going to build a new wooden boat in our shops. But this training is so good because they know how to work with wood. There's a lot of wood on every kind of vessel. They know how to do repairs because they know how a boat goes together. They know how to measure. They know how to use tools safely. They can work in a team. They can problem solve. So keep teaching what you're teaching with the 12-month boat building program. But, you have to add a marine systems program to cover the other 2/3 of what we do.
Yeah.
And so we listened to that, and as a result of that planning process, the whole organization, the instructors, alums, staff, volunteers, the board, all said, yes, let's add a marine systems program. We didn't have a building. We didn't have equipment. We didn't have curriculum. and we didn't have any teachers.
Mm-hmm.
But let that not dissuade us. We had alignment, and we knew we wanted to do it. And I think this is where good fortune, magic, goodness happened, because to invent anything, you need a visionary leader. And it was really fortunate that Kevin Ritz, who'd been teaching marine systems safety standards around the country for 15 years or so, was willing to come and help get this program started.
Yeah.
And he'd been teaching in a way where he was using PowerPoints and people were being tested with multiple choice. He wanted hands-on.
Yeah.
So people could certainly learn the theory, but then practice it multiple times before they got onto the actual boat to do it. And so through his vision, the program has grown. The very first cohort we taught in 2018, I think, was upstairs in a classroom where we had to forklift all the engines, all the equipment up and down. When I say we, it wasn't me.
Yeah.
Kevin worked hard and folks worked hard to make that happen.
Sure.
And it was mostly his equipment that everybody had to share in the class. So fast forward to today, where we just finished our 8th cohort, and there is a 4,800 square foot building dedicated to the Marine Systems program.
That's beautiful.
Kevin has hired additional instructors. We have a full curriculum. And through collaboration with some manufacturers and a competitive federal grant for about $500,000, we've been able to acquire enough equipment so each student will work on their own piece of equipment.
Yeah.
So we have 24 Suzuki outboards, 24 Beta Marine diesel engines. We have state-of-the-art electronic gear from Victron and others, Wakespeed.
Wow.
And people from those manufacturers stop by and talk about their products with the students. And I think it's really amazing that Kevin is able to pull and draw on so many resources from the industry. And that has helped us create a program that continues to evolve. But now we can say the boat school both has a time-tested boat building program that is still compelling, and there is still demand for graduates. And in addition, there's a marine systems program that is teaching state-of-the-art systems that are on most vessels.
Yeah, absolutely.
What year was the school founded?
I think it's 1981.
Okay.
Yep. So now, probably 4 years ago, I donated a couple outboards, small outboards to the school. But then on the last trip that I went and took a tour, Chris took me through, and I saw all those brand new up. The equipment that the students have to work with, it's amazing what you and Kevin and the rest of the people at the school have done. It is such a good opportunity. I was down in Polsbo the other day, and I don't know, getting a sandwich in a sandwich shop or something, met a young kid that was doing the Maritime Center school program, the high school program. He wants to be in the boat trades. And it's funny, growing up, everybody wanted to be in computer science and, all these tech careers. And that was the thing. And I had some insight to the trades from being a butcher when I was young, but I feel like that desire, that appreciation for the trades hasn't existed for a long time. Like you probably noticed yourself. And seeing how excited this kid was he wanted to work on boats. And, we were talking about the boat building school.
Good.
And to see a young, he was probably late teens, early 20s, that excited about a trade like this was incredible. And it is so important. If we lose the trades and the ability to do simple problem solving and working with materials, we're in trouble. The high-tech careers, the big money, that's great, but it's built on the foundation of these people, the people that know how to. I'm the least handy person in the world. I'm the opposite of a handyman. So I absolutely appreciate people that know their trades. And if you have any interest in boats, Port Townsend is just the perfect place to come. And going down to the boatyard and just talking with people, and the traditions, and the, you know, my father and my father's father, you know, there's just so many stories and
my
so many
aunt
people.
and my sister.
Yes,
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
yeah,
don't mean to
yeah,
say that at
yeah.
all. In fact, you
That's
know,
the theme of the Wooden Boat Festival this year.
it absolutely is. And getting to talk to young women who are getting into the trades,
Yeah.
like Emily, who's worked on my boat, who's worked on your boat, and graduated from the boat building school. It's awesome. We love having these resources in town, and it really is just a huge asset.
We're so blessed.
We are blessed.
that we're here where this exists. And it leads me to wonder, are there other, I mean, we can talk about the number of wooden boat schools in this country, but even around the world, I can't imagine there are a whole bunch of them out there at this point.
Yeah.
Well, there are a whole range of schools that teach slices
Sure.
of what we do. And if you look at marine systems, there's certainly many schools, including community colleges and others, technical colleges that teach engine repair and that kind of thing. And in terms of boat building, there have been, you know, Bates Technical College in Tacoma or Seattle Central in Seattle. There have been schools in the Northwest that taught this. But most of those programs have gotten smaller. Seattle Central still has a program with a great teacher, but it's a little shorter and not quite as in-depth on the wood side as what we do. COVID was scary. COVID was like, how do you teach hands-on during a pandemic? And that got 4 boat building schools from around the country to chat with each other. And that is Iris in Newport, Rhode Island, and the Landing School in Maine, and Great Lakes Boat Building, and then the Northwest School here. And we've met once a month for several years now and just shared notes. And all those 4 schools are accredited by the same national accreditor, accrediting commission for career schools and colleges.
Okay.
And we all have some kind of boat building program. And then some have additional programs. Landing School has a design program, and Iris has some great modeling programs and composites programs. And Great Lakes is doing some really cool outreach with businesses in Detroit and others. So there are schools like this, or a flavor of this in various places. I think probably what differentiates the boat school is, and what I've been told by instructors, it's the range of new boat construction that our students work on. Is still pretty high. And our boat building instructors like building new projects each year because that keeps them fresh too. And then the students are watching the problem solving process as an experienced boatwright takes on a new build.
Extremely hands-on. Yeah. And I think also, while there's, I'm sure, great schools all over the world, again, we're just this perfect little place up here with this boat community, you know, like I just can't.
This is where the magic is.
Yeah. I feel like if I were
concentrated,
young again, or looking at a career change into boats, this is where I would come, just because of everything that has to do with the area. Now, I'm wondering, obviously wooden is in the name, but have you been tempted over the years to work with other materials, to expand maybe the courses, work with fiberglass or metal or anything like that?
Yeah, I think the core value being craftsmanship, that is always an exploration. And last year, the students built a carbon fiber, small carbon fiber boat.
Wow.
And it was exciting to see the boat. And it's a replica of a hair shaft design, or similar to a hair shaft design.
Yeah.
It rows really well.
Yeah.
And so on the wood composite front, there have been different experiments adding carbon fiber in.
Yeah.
And at this point, we don't teach metal boat building. But it's interesting. I've been told by some people in the boatyard that when they're teaching a new employee to work on aluminum boats, there's some projects where they prefer to have someone from the boat school over someone who's been through a welding program because of shape and how they understand shape. And whereas someone through the welding program knows how to weld, but sometimes 90-degree angles. Yeah. And so I think that the skills people learn at the boat school can transfer
Mm-hmm.
to other trades
Sure.
because they've learned that.
The process.
Yeah.
I totally understand it. It does. A lot of those skills can transfer over to other assets. In fact, we know like Peter from Travels with Jordy YouTube channel. He owns 3 wooden monks and is working on all 3 of them, or he ons 2 of them.
He owns 2. and
Works on
he's-
3.
Yeah.
But he was, in his prior life, he was a craftsman. So he was a woodworker, not on, it was houses, I think,
Yeah. he was
home
a
building.
contractor.
Yeah, but he took those skills and he was absolutely able to apply it to boats. And so I think a lot of those skills are transferable, all those skills that I don't have. So now if somebody is interested in, they want to get into the trades, but they don't know how they want to get in or what direction they want to go. What would you recommend for somebody that's pursuing, a trade in the boat industry?
I think it's heartening to hear about people wanting to pursue a trade in the boat industry.
Isn't it great? Yeah.
It's so fabulous.
Yeah.
And I would love people to come visit the school. We do a free tour the first Friday of each month, and that's open to anybody. And we also have a free magazine we do each year that talks about the projects that students work on, what our alums are up to. We have a pretty rich website that has stories of our alums, and it has details about the programs. It has a school catalog, school calendar, cost of tuition. We're just launching a new blog that'll have fun articles on it. We have a free electronic newsletter people can be in touch with. And then if someone wants to really think about admissions and they've explored what's online, we have a small team. They can mail admissions at the school's address, nwswb.edu, and we can answer questions, set up a tour. We have a virtual open house that was recorded in December, and that's available on our website. So there's lots of ways to get more information. And I want to go back to something you were talking about, which has to do with the location in Jefferson County here.
Mm-hmm.
I believe the location of this boat school in Jefferson County is one of the competitive advantages the school has, or one of the reasons. That's one of the reasons why someone might choose to come to this school, because what they're going to learn both inside and outside the classroom. Inside the classroom, in addition to our instructors, we have guests from the boatyard come in and talk about things. Students will do field trips up to the boatyard. This is a working boatyard that has a really wide range of boats being worked on. And we have people from the boatyard helping advise us on curriculum. So the fact there is this very unique working boatyard within 10 minutes of the school really, really makes a difference. And then when they're out of school, they can go up to the boatyard and walk around and see what's going on and get to know the boatwrights and get to know the boat builders and see who's working on what marine systems and hear what's being advanced and invented. So it's it's beautiful environment, but it's also, because it's so rich in the marine trades, as you described, it makes it a great, great learning environment for people.
It's beautiful, but it's also extremely functional, like that what you're drawn to, like Glory Bee, beautiful and functional. But just because, I think it's here in the Pacific Northwest at this school, it's a very unique situation. I'm not knocking on any other schools. I'm sure there's great schools out there. But I do feel like if you are looking at getting into the trade, you would struggle to find a better situation than this school and this area. It's so, the school is so tied into the community. And I feel like, just talking to everybody down at the boatyard, if you're looking for a career trajectory, and these days tech is getting, it's not as, I don't know all, but I'm very engaged with AI. And I think there's a threat to the tech industries on the horizon. And that leads me to also believe that these types of trades are going to become even more valuable, these skills, because AI can't build a boat. maybe can design one, but it's not going to be in there doing the work. And so I feel like there's certain trades, especially in today's environment, that maybe will become even more popular again as people rediscover the trades. I also think there's a lot of young people that don't even realize the opportunities that are out there. And the Northwest Boat Building School is certainly an opportunity. I loved talking to that young guy down in Polsbo because I could see the excitement in his eyes. He wanted to be involved in the boating industry like I wanted to be involved in computers back in the 80s, right? And so had I known then what I know now, I would have gone to this school and been in boat building. But such a great opportunity. If somebody is looking for a career in boats, what might they be looking at in terms of time? Like when they go, okay, this is something I want to get into. Either that it's a young person who's coming out of high school or around that age, or maybe somebody like you, middle of your life, you say, I want to change my trajectory. How much time does somebody have to commit, or should they commit to learning this trade and then, and expect to be able to get a job?
If someone has an interest in learning the trade, I think the Northwest School of Wood and Boat Building provides a good first step. And that first step is 9 months for systems or a year for boat building. And at that point, people would be qualified for an entry-level job in a boatyard or boat manufacturer. Mm-hmm. We have a career fair, and a lot of employers come in going, oh, choose us, choose us. I don't want to pretend that after a year at school or 9 months at school, after a year at boat building, you're not like a journeyman, journey level.
That's any trade.
Boat builder.
Yeah.
It still takes time to get there.
You got to put in the years.
And so sometimes we might have a graduate who comes across as thinking they know more than they really do. And so I want to say it takes a year, and then you can get a job in or it might help you get a job. We can't guarantee jobs. And someone might choose to hire you because they know you took the time to learn some skills and learn how to be safe, and you have a vocabulary and so forth. But then you work your way up from there. And in marine systems, students get to learn about, I think, 10 different disciplines. And if you spend 2 weeks learning how to perform the basic maintenance tasks on an outboard, that doesn't mean you're a certified outboard mechanic.
Of course.
And so I just want to differentiate that. I think it takes a year to kind of open the door, build the basic skills, and then there's a pathway from there.
Obviously, somebody's success in the industry is going to depend a lot on themselves. You give them the resources, the tools, and the ability to go forward. And working with some of your graduates, there's great ones. Obviously, we haven't worked with any that we haven't liked and wouldn't hire again. So it gives you the tools to go forward. Obviously, there's here in Port Townsend, it comes with, there's some weight to it. I went to this school here in this area, and there's a lot of employers locally, and the graduates that I know, or the people that are connected to the school that do that kind of work, are so booked up. I think there is definitely a need for more tradespeople in this area. Those that are working and that are good they have no time off. The people up here, these tradesmen, just work, and work. Because there is so much work here. It is a hub of the boats in the Pacific Northwest. So I think, first of all, Betsy, thank you so much for joining us today. Like I said, you're in walking distance from my house. I love the school. I love living in this community. I love being around all these boaters, and the people that are involved with you that we know are just wonderful people. I don't know all the instructors. We'll have to have them all on the podcast
at some point.
But just a great school, great resource, great way to enter into the boating world, and can't find a better place, in my opinion, to go through that process.
Although I think Betsy is going to find a better place soon, because you're casting off in a couple of weeks.
What?
Are you not heading? Well, just taking Glory Bee.
Yes.
So, I've been on this journey with Glory Bee, and I'd had the boat I've had the boat for a long time. And 3 years ago, up here in Port Townsend, a couple friends said, when are you going to go cruising? Because I'd never gone cruising on the boat. I've just kind of kept her and taken care of her and done little day trips. And some friends really kicked me in the butt and said, we're getting out on the water. And we went and did 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and it was so fun.
Where did
Isn't
you
that
go?
amazing?
Went north, went up through the San Juans and Gulf Islands up to Desolation Sound.
Mm-hmm.
And then last year I got to go for 2 weeks with a couple of friends. And so this year, July 11th, I get to leave for 7 weeks
Oh my goodness.
and
That
go
is so
on
awesome.
Glory Bee with these friends who dragged me
Yeah.
out onto the water. I'll just say it's really fun.
Oh, yes,
It
it
really
is.
is.
I was just before we started,
Yep.
I was telling Darren, I'm like, I have to go cruising again. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just,
Yeah.
I need it.
Yeah.
So 7 weeks,
Mhm.
and you're going up to the islands?
Yeah, heading north.
Just going
Just-
north.
Yeah.
Yep.
Second start of the right and on till morning.
Yeah. Perfect.
That is the way to cruise, in my opinion.
Wow.
That is awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That is so good, man. Oh, I'm
Send
jealous,
pictures.
but happy. Yes,
Send
please do send pictures. That's so awesome that
Yeah.
Glory Bee is going to be out there being glorious. That is very cool. So, as you mentioned, if people are interested in checking out the school, you can go to nwswb.edu. You say it all the time, so you can probably say it really fast.
You did say it really fast. I was like, I didn't catch it. That's why it's right here, right
Yes,
now.
it is right here, right now. It'll be in the show notes. If you have any interest in the trade, certainly go check it out. It is, like she said, a super website, tons of info there. I've gotten lost in it plenty of times, even back when I was looking into the school myself. But also, come out the first Friday of every month, you said. You can take a tour.
Well, now, there are people that are going to be interested in learning
The
trades.
trade.
and
But
the
if you're like
trades.
me and just want to
Right.
have some skills.
But I want to ask Betsy, is there also a space for folks that don't want to learn to build a boat or repair anything, but want to support the Northwest School of Wooden Boat Building? Is there an avenue for people to help?
You know, the Northwest School of Wooden Boat Building is a nonprofit trade school. And with our accreditor, 90% of the trade schools are for-profit. And one thing that makes it unique as a nonprofit is our focus is our mission, which is to teach people craftsmanship. And we want to keep our tuition low enough so that it's affordable to the very people who
Yes.
need to earn a trade.
Mhm.
It costs a lot of money to teach in this hands-on environment with these resources. So as a nonprofit, we raise money each year. And it's really interesting. I attend a number of classic wooden boat festivals each year. And when I'm sitting around the dock, I hear people going, "Where are the young people?" And I'm like, "They're in Port Hadlock. We have them." And so there are people who really care about this legacy and how to perpetuate this legacy, even if they're not going to attend. And one of those people this year did something very inspirational. He made a large gift to a scholarship program and said, "I want this to go to some people from this county or adjacent counties to pay as much of their tuition as it takes for them to have an opportunity to come to this school." So
That's great.
I believe like the single biggest way people can help is consider donating to the scholarship fund.
Yeah.
Because that helps remove one of the two biggest barriers. The
Barriers.
other biggest barrier is housing. And so some people
Yeah.
have chosen to rent to a boat school student the extra bedroom or the whatever, the grandmother cottage or whatever over the years. And that's been amazing.
Yeah, I talked to a student that was living on a sailboat or something like that. It is a challenge for some of these students to find housing. So whether it's donating cash or funds or other ways, like a place for students to stay. I know one thing from talking to Kevin, you don't want everybody coming at you with their old boats to quote unquote donate them.
Yeah.
So yeah, something that is a little bit more easy for the school to use and go towards this wonderful program and the opportunity for people to get into the trades up here. I feel like, this area is like the beating heart of wooden boats, and great school. Yes. Thank you for the sound effects.
And I wanted to clarify the Marine Systems program is designed so certainly people can work on wooden boats, but they actually can work on any vessel of any hull type.
Yep.
And so some have suggested we rebrand the school because it's called the Northwest School of Wooden Boat Building, maybe that feels too limiting. We have chosen to stay with the name for right now because of the legacy of what it represents.
Yes.
But it's very important that I help convey
Yes.
that the Marine Systems program is relevant to every vessel type.
Absolutely. Of
Recreational, commercial,
wooden,
if it floats.
steel,
It's
plastic. Yes. Anything. And we've seen your systems people at work, the best in that I've ever seen. Incredibly talented, knowledgeable. Oh, and you know what is also really cool about the people that come from your school is they also like to educate while they're doing their work. I've noticed that about a lot of the it's not just I'll be in there, I'll fix it. They're telling you, how to maintain it yourself or what they're doing. I think maybe it's in the process of how you teach. But your students become teachers and
conduit for that knowledge.
The knowledge, it's been a
really cool,
wonderful experience personally dealing with people from the school. Total pleasure meeting you finally, and we hope to have you back. And we would love to get down to the school.
We got to go for a tour with the Boat Geeks.
Yes.
Do a tour of the Northwest School.
We would definitely.
We look forward to having you.
Absolutely. So. Betsy, thank you. It was a pleasure. And again, everybody, if you're interested, nwswb.edu. If you're interested in checking out the school to go, long course, intensive program. If you're looking to
just to
donate, to support
the school,
you can find that there as well.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, this has been another episode of the Boat Geeks. Thanks for joining us. And until next time.